Yes.
Unbecoming. He was a sex offender.
Yeah.
Prince Andrew has long lived under the shadow of rumors.
Do I regret the fact that he has quite obviously conducted himself in a manner unbecoming?
Scandals and whispered secrets that refused to fade. For years, the public questioned his integrity, while the palace tried to shield him from the storm. Yet, science has a way of tearing through silence. And now a DNA test has surfaced, shattering the carefully crafted walls of royal protection. This test doesn't just answer old suspicions, it ignites new ones that could change everything. What devastating truth has finally been uncovered about Prince Andrew? The announcement that shook the palace. When Buckingham Palace released its announcement, the world seemed to stop for a moment. The statement was brief, but thunderous. Prince Andrew would return all of his royal and military titles and would no longer be addressed as His Royal Highness. For a family built on tradition, titles, and appearances, this was no ordinary adjustment. It was a stunning declaration that rattled the monarchy and sent shockwaves across the globe. The message was clear. Something far deeper than ceremonial formality had shifted within the House of Windsor. For years, the prince had lived under a cloud of whispers. Gossip circulated in corridors of power, at elegant dinner tables, and across newspaper headlines. Some dismissed the stories as idle speculation, while others swore they held fragments of truth. The palace had always responded with silence, carefully maintaining an image of unity and dignity. Yet the silence only fueled curiosity. Rumors, once easy to brush aside, began to cling stubbornly to Andrew's name. He was no longer remembered only as the daring young prince who flew helicopters during the Falklands War, or as the confident royal who once embodied charm and charisma. Instead, he became the subject of constant suspicion, a figure surrounded not by applause, but by questions. Then arrived the DNA test, the moment that tore away decades of speculation and uncertainty. Carried out under the strictest supervision, every step sealed and monitored, it left no room for doubt or misinterpretation. What gossip had only hinted at for years now became an undeniable fact. The results confirmed a hidden truth tied to the prince's private life, transforming whispers into certainty. In an instant, the carefully guarded veil of secrecy the palace had maintained for so long was ripped away, exposing a reality that could no longer be ignored. The impact was immediate. What had once been rumor now stood as undeniable evidence, too powerful to ignore, too clear to deny. For the royal family, this was more than a personal scandal. It was a public reckoning. The monarchy thrives on ceremony, reputation, and the trust of the people. But in one dramatic turn, trust was fractured. A story that had quietly brewed in the background erupted onto the world stage with the force of an earthquake. The public reaction was fierce. Some felt vindicated, claiming they had always believed the whispers. Others were shocked, struggling to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the truth now laid bare. Media outlets dissected every detail, commentators debated the fallout, and the public hungered for more revelations. Every headline seemed to underline the same reality. No one, not even a prince, could escape the weight of truth. Inside the palace, the consequences were swift. To preserve the dignity of the crown and protect the monarchy from further damage, titles were stripped, honors revoked, and a formal distancing was made. It was an extraordinary step, one that symbolized both accountability and exile. Prince Andrew, once addressed as His Royal Highness, was now simply Andrew, a man defined not by ceremony but by controversy. This moment was not just about a single prince. It was about the monarchy itself standing at a crossroads. It served as a reminder that secrets, no matter how deeply buried, eventually come to light. The announcement changed Andrew's future and the way people see the monarchy. But can one revelation alone define him? Or had people already formed opinions about him long before the truth came out? Let's delve into the details. A prince in the shadows. From the very beginning, Prince Andrew's life seemed to be shaped by a tale of contrasts. On one side was the polished image the world admired, a dashing young prince whose good looks, charm, and confidence made him stand out even within a family already renowned for its history and tradition. His smile could light up a room, his daring spirit won him admiration, and his military service earned genuine applause. He embodied the kind of royal who seemed both glamorous and courageous. To many, he was not just another member of the monarchy, but a symbol of modern royalty. Yet beneath this gleaming surface, a darker narrative began to weave itself around him. Whispers followed Andrew wherever he went. At glittering banquets, behind closed doors, and within the pages of tabloids, questions grew louder about his personal choices, his circle of friends, and his private behavior. These murmurs never seemed to vanish. Instead, they deepened with time. For every accolade he received in public, there was a shadow of doubt trailing behind it. What looked like admiration in the spotlight was often undercut by suspicion whispered in the dark. This tension between image and reality grew into an almost unshakable paradox. To the public eye, Andrew remained the bold prince, handsome, decorated, and undeniably charismatic. But the undercurrent of gossip slowly turned that admiration into unease. People began to wonder whether the man presented to them was truly the man behind the scenes. The palace, true to its long-standing tradition, maintained its silence. For decades, royal protocol meant ignoring rumors, allowing them to pass like storms over a grand estate. Yet in Andrew's case, the storm never quite dispersed. It only gathered strength. And then came the moment that tore away the last veil of secrecy, the DNA test. Unlike rumors, unlike speculation, unlike the whispers that could be brushed aside or dismissed as hearsay, this was science. This was evidence that could not be twisted by opinion or softened by charm. Conducted with strict procedures, guarded against error, and revealed with finality, the results carried the weight of undeniable truth. When the findings became public, the contrast in Andrew's life collapsed into collision. The divide between perception and reality, once hidden behind palace walls, was exposed in full view of the world. No longer could the carefully maintained image of the brave, admired prince shield him from the consequences of his private decisions. The truth confirmed by the test ripped through the silence the palace had worked so hard to preserve. The world saw the results, and the palace felt the storm. The fallout was immediate and unrelenting. Questions of character, trust, and responsibility flooded public conversation. Admirers who once celebrated him now struggled to reconcile their memories with the revelations before them. And within the monarchy itself, the balance between protecting an individual and safeguarding the institution tipped unmistakably towards survival of the crown. What began as whispers had become a reckoning. The contrasts of Andrew's life, public praise and private suspicion, were no longer a hidden paradox. They were exposed, undeniable, and irreversible, reshaping not only how the world saw him, but how the monarchy itself confronted its most uncomfortable truths. Whispers became truth, and truth became the storm that reshaped royalty. But will this revelation be the only thing Andrew is remembered for? Or do his years of service still hold weight in his story? Now let's dive into Andrew's military chapter, from palace to battlefield. Before scandal, whispers, and DNA revelations began to dominate headlines, Prince Andrew had carved out a reputation that once earned him genuine admiration. Long before his name was clouded with controversy, he was known as the daring young royal who stepped away from privilege and into the heart of military service. At a time when many expected princes to remain symbols of tradition rather than men of action, Andrew chose a different path. He became a naval officer. His career in the Royal Navy spanned nearly 20 years, a period marked by discipline, dedication, and the kind of sacrifice that few royals ever undertook. He trained as a helicopter pilot, mastering a skill that demanded precision, courage, and the ability to make split-second decisions under pressure. For a man born into the luxuries of palaces and ceremonies, climbing into the cockpit of a Lynx helicopter and flying into combat zones was both unusual and deeply symbolic. It was proof that, for a time at least, Prince Andrew sought to build his identity not just on his royal title, but on his service to the country. The defining moment of his naval career came in 1982 during the Falklands War, a bitter conflict between the United Kingdom and Argentina over a cluster of islands in the South Atlantic. At just 22 years old, Andrew's role as a Sea King helicopter pilot placed him in situations that were as perilous as they were historic. He wasn't sitting safely on the sidelines. He was directly involved in missions that demanded extraordinary nerve. Some of his assignments included casualty evacuations, flying into dangerous zones to retrieve the wounded, knowing that each flight carried risks not only from enemy fire, but also from the harsh conditions of the South Atlantic. He also took part in rescue operations, bringing men back from the brink of disaster, and even flew decoy missions. These missions were among the most dangerous, deliberately drawing enemy missiles toward his helicopter to protect other aircraft and ships. In effect, the young prince willingly put his life on the line so others might have a better chance of survival. It was a role unlike anything the modern British monarchy had seen in generations. Here was a prince, second son of Queen Elizabeth II, not tucked away in ceremonial uniform for photographs, but facing the real dangers of war. For this he was praised both at home and abroad. His fellow servicemen respected him, not just because of his royal status, but because he proved himself willing to serve as one of them. For the public, too, it became a powerful image. Andrew, the smiling and energetic royal, transformed into a figure of bravery and duty. Newspapers of the time often celebrated his courage, portraying him as a symbol of modern royalty, one that could be both glamorous and grounded in service. Though later years would reshape his legacy, Andrew's military service stands as a reminder of the chapter when he was seen not as a figure of controversy, but as a man of valor. In those years, before the whispers and the tests, he was the brave young prince who had done what few royals dared: step into combat and carry the weight of duty on his shoulders. Prince Andrew's bravery in battle earned him the title of Royal Warrior. But was that his only mark on history, or did his influence reach far beyond the battlefield? Now, let's unravel his journey from royal patronages to his bold role as a global trade envoy, duty beyond the battlefield. Beyond the uniform and medals of his military years, Prince Andrew's life unfolded into another kind of service, one carried out not on battlefields, but across conference halls, charity events, and international platforms. When he stepped away from the cockpit of a Royal Navy helicopter, he did not disappear quietly into the background. Instead, he carved out a new space for himself within public life, one where he could wield influence not through combat, but through diplomacy, patronage, and the soft power of the crown. For much of the 1980s and 1990s, Andrew's diary was filled with appearances at charitable organizations and cultural events. He became patron to a range of institutions, lending his presence to causes that spanned education, technology, youth development, and the arts. These engagements may not have carried the danger of war, but they carried their own weight, for a royal patronage often meant a surge of funding, publicity, and credibility for the organizations involved. Andrew's role was to highlight innovation, to encourage young people to push beyond limits, and to showcase British culture both at home and abroad. His visits often drew attention from local communities, and in those moments, he played the part of the approachable prince, shaking hands, listening to stories, and offering the monarchy's seal of recognition. As the years progressed, Andrew's responsibilities expanded far beyond charity galas and cultural showcases. In 2001, he was appointed the UK's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment, a post he would hold for almost a decade. In this capacity, Andrew stepped onto a much larger stage, becoming a figure who traveled widely to promote British business interests overseas. His task was not ceremonial alone. It carried genuine significance. He was expected to help secure trade links, encourage investment, and open doors for British companies in competitive global markets. Representing the UK in this way placed Andrew in the role of an economic diplomat, a bridge between boardrooms and governments. He met with political leaders, business executives, and investors, presenting himself as a champion for British innovation and commerce. These journeys took him across continents, from Asia to the Middle East, from North America to Africa, often in pursuit of opportunities that could strengthen the nation's financial standing. His work was framed as part of the monarchy's evolving role in the modern world, using influence and prestige not only to support tradition, but to contribute to the practical needs of the country's economy. In this period, Andrew was often spoken of as an energetic envoy, someone who relished the chance to connect Britain with international partners. To some observers, he embodied the Crown's attempt to adapt to a global age, where prestige alone was no longer enough and tangible results were demanded. He had stepped into a role that required charm, persistence, and negotiation. A different battlefield, but one no less important for the image of the monarchy. Yet, as history would later reveal, these efforts, though real, were eventually eclipsed. The glow of his contributions dimmed under the weight of personal controversies and, ultimately, the revelations of the DNA test. Still, in the quieter corners of his record, the years of charity, cultural patronage, and trade diplomacy remain. They serve as reminders that, before the storm, Andrew sought to shape his legacy not only as a prince of war, but also as a prince of service, striving to align monarchy with modern demands. Andrew built influence through service, diplomacy, and global ties. But was his destiny ultimately defined by scandal rather than service? Now, let's explore the relentless rumors that led to a dramatic DNA reckoning. Whispers that would not die. For decades, rumors surrounded Prince Andrew like a shadow that refused to lift. In quiet pubs, over dinner tables, and whispered conversations across Britain, the same question kept surfacing. Was there a hidden child connected to the Duke of York? What began as faint murmurs of gossip slowly evolved into persistent whispers, then into bold headlines splashed across tabloids. Each new mention, each speculative article, added fuel to a story that simply would not die down. The royal household's response was always the same: silence. Buckingham Palace, long accustomed to the art of restraint, chose never to acknowledge the whispers. Advisors believed that ignoring speculation would eventually smother it, allowing the story to fade into the background. Yet the opposite happened. Every refusal to comment, every quiet dismissal, only deepened curiosity. To the public, silence was not strength, it was mystery. And mystery always demands answers. As years went by, the story became something larger than idle talk. It began to gnaw at the palace's image of control and dignity. What if the rumors were true? And if they were not, why would the prince not confront them head-on? Each unanswered question made the whispers sound louder, echoing through every corner of the kingdom. Then came the breaking point. Someone, whether an accuser determined to prove their claim or a challenger unwilling to be ignored, finally demanded proof. Not words, not denials, but evidence that could not be twisted or hidden. A DNA test. Suddenly, speculation moved into the realm of science, where opinion no longer ruled. A test was clear. A test was final. And most importantly, a test would reveal the truth that had evaded the world. for decades. The demand struck like a thunderclap. In an instant, what had long been dismissed as idle gossip now commanded national attention. News channels cut into regular programming with updates. Front pages carried bold headlines asking the same urgent question: would Prince Andrew agree to the test? Journalists scrambled for sources, experts filled television panels, and the air buzzed with anticipation. For the public, patience had already run out. Too many years had passed with too many unanswered questions. People wanted closure, one way or another. Would the DNA test confirm the whispers, proving a hidden child had long existed in the shadows? Or would it finally silence the critics and restore the prince's name? Prince Andrew faced a choice that was anything but simple. Saying yes to the DNA test meant walking straight into a whirlwind of scrutiny, publicity, and potential upheaval that could change every corner of his life, no matter the outcome. But saying no was equally dangerous. Silence no longer offered protection. In the eyes of the public, refusing to act would speak louder than any denial, appearing as an unspoken admission of the very truth he had tried so long to conceal. The palace, once firm in its strategy of silence, now stood at a crossroads. The world's eyes were fixed on Prince Andrew, waiting for his choice. And in that tense moment, the whispers that had clung to him for decades no longer felt like gossip. They felt like destiny pressing in, demanding an answer that could no longer be delayed. One DNA test carried the power to silence decades of whispers. But would its verdict shatter the monarchy beyond repair or ignite its reinvention? And had Prince Andrew's legacy already been reshaped by a truth he could never escape? Let's uncover the answers. The test that changed history. The DNA test that would forever alter the course of Prince Andrew's life was carried out with a level of precision usually reserved for the highest matters of state. Nothing was left to chance. Every detail, every step, was checked and double-checked, for one single mistake could cast doubt on the entire process and plunge the palace into deeper scandal. The collection itself felt almost ceremonial. Under strict supervision, samples were taken, carefully sealed, and placed into containers designed to prevent any form of tampering. The chain of custody was guarded with the same seriousness as if it were a crown jewel, for everyone involved knew the explosive potential of what those samples might reveal. From the sterile rooms of the laboratory to the guarded transportation channels, the material was handled with an air of inevitability, as though history itself was watching. Inside the lab, scientists approached their work not only with technical skill, but with the weight of responsibility pressing on their shoulders. They knew the stakes. This was no ordinary case, no routine test to be filed away. Every protocol was followed with religious devotion, protective gear worn, equipment sterilized, and records documented in painstaking detail. Each movement of the pipette, each reading from the machines, was measured against the reality that a single error could mean chaos, denial, or claims of conspiracy. Meanwhile, beyond the sterile silence of the lab, the outside world held its breath. The media buzzed with feverish speculation, newspapers filled their pages with endless theories, and television anchors debated late into the night. Was the prince hiding a secret child? Would the palace finally break its silence? Would Andrew himself resist or cooperate? Across Britain and indeed the world, people gathered around screens and radios, waiting, speculating, and demanding answers. For decades, whispers had floated like smoke around his name, and now, at last, the fire was close to being uncovered. When the envelope containing the results was finally opened, it was not done lightly. The conclusion was clear, definitive, and undeniable. The DNA did not lie. It confirmed the existence of a hidden child. What had once been dismissed as rumor or gossip was now established fact, set down in scientific certainty. The effect was instant and devastating. The bubble of security that had protected Andrew, built on privilege, royal rank, and public admiration, shattered in a heartbeat. For decades, his identity had been wrapped in titles, military uniforms, and the applause of a nation. Yet all those symbols of honor now felt fragile, powerless against the weight of unflinching truth. The DNA test had spoken, delivering a certainty that no royal decree, no carefully maintained image, and no public respect could ever undo. Reality could not be denied. For the royal family, the revelation was more than a scandal. It was a storm that rattled the very foundations of their carefully maintained image. For Andrew himself, it was the beginning of a chapter he could neither rewrite nor escape. The shield of secrecy was gone, and in its place stood the unyielding clarity of fact. The prince had a child, and the world would never see him the same again. The DNA revealed the undeniable truth, changing Andrew's life forever. But what does it mean for the monarchy? And could one man's scandal reshape an entire institution's legacy? Now, let's explore the DNA revelation that stripped a prince, divided a family, and tested the monarchy's strength. Fall, consequence, and the weight of truth. The revelation surrounding Prince Andrew did not just alter the course of his personal life, it reshaped the monarchy itself and left a deep mark on royal history. What had once been whispered in private corners was now confirmed in black and white, and the consequences were swift, undeniable, and impossible to escape. The very titles and honors that had once defined him, royal and military, were stripped away. The words, "His Royal Highness," a style he had carried since birth, were no longer his to claim. Roles that once gave him purpose were revoked. Invitations that once arrived without question suddenly stopped. For Andrew, the walls of privilege and ceremony that had always protected him now stood bare, leaving him exposed to both public judgment and personal isolation. Inside the royal family, the atmosphere was tense and divided. King Charles III faced an agonizing dilemma. As a monarch, he had a duty to safeguard the institution and protect the dignity of the crown. Yet, as a brother, he was torn between compassion and disappointment, forced to balance blood with responsibility. His siblings, too, struggled. Some wrestled with anger, feeling betrayed that Andrew's actions had cast a shadow over the family's image. Others wrestled with sorrow, remembering the man who had once been seen as brave, charismatic, and full of promise. Advisors and courtiers, meanwhile, found themselves against a tidal wave of public scrutiny, trying to preserve the monarchy's credibility in an age when transparency was demanded more fiercely than ever. For Andrew, the change was brutal and unrelenting. Once the smiling, adventurous young prince admired for his military service and charisma, he now became a figure of relentless attention for all the wrong reasons. He found himself isolated, not only from the adoring public that had once cheered him, but also from the family circles where trust had grown thin. The man who had once walked confidently through gilded halls and international banquets now navigated a much smaller world, marked by silence, suspicion, and the constant glare of cameras waiting to capture his every move. Yet Andrew's fall was more than just the story of one man. It revealed a far larger truth. No crown, no title, no centuries of royal tradition can protect anyone from the power of truth. Secrets, no matter how deeply hidden or carefully guarded, have a way of surfacing. And when they do, they can rattle even the strongest foundations, testing institutions, reputations, and legacies alike, leaving a lasting mark on history that cannot be ignored. The scandal sent shockwaves through the monarchy, raising questions no one could ignore. Could an institution centuries old, built on tradition, honor, and continuity, endure when one of its own was publicly exposed by irrefutable evidence? Could the fragile trust of the public, long sustained by reverence and ceremony, be restored after such a fall? For ordinary people, the revelation was a stark reminder. No amount of privilege, title, or wealth shields anyone from accountability, and even those born into royal palaces must face the unyielding weight of truth. In the end, Andrew's fall was not just the story of one man. It became a warning to all. The weight of truth is inescapable, and when it finally comes to light, it demands a reckoning that neither crowns nor centuries of power can withstand. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen.